right. So, like I said, you're here to attend using communities of practice to ensure equity and inclusive practices in schools. Your presenters today are me. My name is Namita Maunder and Rose DuMond. Just a little bit about me. My background is that of a speech language pathologist. I studied both in India as well as did my master's in St. Louis, way back, but did practice in Missouri and then also practice in New Jersey before doing a couple of decades as a speech language pathologist in the East Bay area. So I worked in Fremont, Newark, New Haven, those areas as a speech language pathologist. Over the years, took a lot of leadership role in that position of a SLP, got my AAC certification, worked as, autism and preschool SLP. So did a lot of different things as an SLP. One of the wonderful opportunities we have is working with the whole range of age group. And I think that really helped me see the bigger picture, and also had this wonderful opportunity of doing a lot of co-treatments. So one of the things that fascinated me was working with psychologists, working with occupational therapists, and really learning, working with teachers, going in the classroom. And then I began to see the big picture and kind of really took on more leadership roles, ended up getting my admin credential. And last 7 years, I had the wonderful opportunity of collaborating with Rose, working at Santa Clara Unified School District as a program specialist. And after that has been this new role of a coordinator for a year with the Santa Clara County SELPAs. And we have the wonderful opportunity of working now, looking at the system from a bigger viewpoint, just trying to understand, how does CDE really come in? How does all the legal work happen at the district? So it's been a wonderful journey so far for a year into this position. And today's topic I will be sharing a little bit more insight on why SELPA is doing community of practice and what is the need. So we will get into those nitty-gritties, which you will see ties up with the work that we have in front of us today and this afternoon. So that's about me, and really happy to be with all of you. We'll take more introductions from you guys, but first I'm handing it off to Rose.
Thanks, Namita. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Rose DuMond. Some of you may be familiar with my work with NW SELPA, but I am currently an educational consultant. I retired about a year ago from Santa Clara Unified School District as a coordinator for special education services, and have a background as a school psychologist, a program specialist, coordinator, as well as a director for special education. My journey, though, has taken a little bit of a turn, and my interest has gone into inclusive practices, MTSS. And so for the last 5 years, I've really immersed myself in supporting all kinds of general education initiatives. I'm a big proponent of MTSS and provided professional learning opportunities, attended conferences like all of you on inclusive practices and MTSS. And much of my consultant work is in helping to develop tiered systems, inclusive environments, and now with communities of practice. So I'll be talking about more of the nuts and bolts in the second half of the presentation. So glad you're here to join us today.
Great. And if in the chat, it would be really nice if we could get like who's here. So you could type your name if you feel like, or just the role that you have in professional role. If you're a teacher, psychologist, or anybody that you identify your role, working role. So that would be great for us to know who do we have in the audience. All right, we have teachers and behavior support program assistant. Thank you for joining. All right, very nice. Welcome to the principal, very nice. All right. Again, thank you, all of you, for sharing your afternoon with us. All right. Program specialist, thank you for joining. Special ed teacher, too. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yes. Let's keep the chat going, and I'm going to let Rose monitor the chat as we go through the presentation till she speaks. All right. So here we go. All right. Our learning objectives for today. This is straight from what we turned into Inclusion Collaborative, but we hope to get more deeper in conversations, but definitely we want to share with you the key benefits of participating in a community of practice. And you should have some practical strategies or takeaways for the COP that you can use in your daily work. And also maybe you've been thinking about how to start one. So develop a plan, some nuggets you might find to discuss this use of COP in your school district or SELPA if you're here with, or just your organization that you belong to. And also, of course, to describe the utility of a community of practice as an effective, equitable, and inclusive practice, combining with targeted professional development. Again, we'll get into some details of differentiating different learning models. So that's our goal for today. So let's dive deeper straight into what is community of practice. You know, we're hearing it a lot more, but it was not till, we know that in history, as early as mankind has been there, people come together, whether they're in informal gatherings or formal gatherings, to talk about something that is important for them. So that's historical, but the primary use of the concept originated in learning theory, and the cognitive anthropologists who really coined the term community of practice is Etienne Wagner and colleague Jean Levy, and they did it in 2015. They coined the term community of practice. So it's not like it's really ancient. It's become more, and then they further defined the pillars or what is their meaning and how they related community of practice. So the term referred to as community of practice is actually a living curriculum, according to Wagner. Communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern. They may be having a strong passion for something that they do and learn, and how to do it better as they interact regularly. So these are some of the key components as you keep it in your mind as we discuss with you and take a deeper dive into how we did our community of practice. That's the story we'll share, but also about different learning models that you'll hear today. So let's hear from exactly what Wagner talks about. And oops, okay, I'm going to just try to move this. Is this bothering you? I'm trying to see if I can just, all right, okay. That. So the three main elements, according to the title of community of practice, includes domain, community, and practice. And we're going to see how all of this relate with each other to form what we call as the three main principles of community of practice. So when we talk about domain, it is the community of practice. It's not just a simple network or a connection between people. You know, it's not just a group of people who are just coming together without an identity. An identity, according to Wagner, is most critical when you talk about domain. They have a shared interest, a shared topic that they choose and take a further deeper dive into it. The shared competence that distinguishes members from other people. They're all having a similar identity, so a similar level of competency is kind of a requirement in their idea of community of practice. And of course, that relates to that they're talking about is the domain that brings a community together. And when we talk about community, we're talking about that people with a certain identity who are coming together to form a relationship. They share ideas. They're talking about a particular topic that's important for them. They help each other out in problem solving, and they have joint activities and discussions. So there is this shared feeling of learning and growth over time, which is again very unique to how they define community of practice. Again, this is happening because the people together are practitioners, is how it's defined by Wagner. They are the people who have a feeling of community because the members of the communities are all practitioners. They're sharing their stories, their experiences in their own setting of work, or whatever setting of personal interest that they have. They are sharing tools that they may be using, which might be unique, or they might be creating altogether a new tool that they can be using. They are discussing ways of addressing recurring problems in their practice. And this takes time. It's not just a one-shot meeting, which does not, problem solving can be a long-drawn method, or just defining the problem, or a tool if they're developing. It can take multiple meetings. So, and also just getting to know each other. They have a common identity, but only if they meet more often will they form that relationship. So those are kind of the key components of when you're thinking of community of practice. So let's, like I said initially, we're going to share with you our story, right? Why at the community of practice was important at SELPA, what's happening, and maybe that will help you relate to why we did it and hopefully spark some interest in your own practice. So one of the things that's happening with the SELPA and the way we exist right now, if you saw under my title or in my signature, we have 5 SELPAs, which is SELPA 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. And in these 5 SELPA, a couple of them are single district SELPA, like San Jose Unified and Santa Clara Unified. And some of the others are much more a multi-district SELPA, which means that they have a combination of school districts, which can range as small as, Lakeside School, a small charter school, to a much larger school like a Palo Alto Unified School District. So the various sizes of school districts exist in our multi-district SELPAs. Now, one of the things that's happening for us is we are combining these 5 SELPAs to one SELPA for the school year 24-25. So we're going to all be called, the new name right now in proposal is Northwest SELPA. And Rose alluded to it, but it's not kind of really official at this time. It's coming up for us in 24-25. And which means right now, as we move towards a single district SELPA, we will have to take all these 20 school districts and the Santa Clara County of Education, where we exist physically, and align our practices, align our policies, which is aligned, but even more, talk the same language and follow the similar procedure and policies. Again, you have to understand, SELPAs do look slightly different, like I shared in the beginning, and that it's important when we come together under one umbrella. There are many structures that will be changing. For example, I'll just give you an example, like our CAC structure, some of our planning annual budget plans of SELPA. So there will be more impacts. And how will this impact our services? It's very critical that we come together, talk about it, there's always a fear to unknown. And so we want to take away these fears down and hopefully have a better discussion and talk to our service providers and see what they think and how they can work together better or understand what are the different issues in our with our LEAs or our SELPAs. We also wanted to share best practices and provide a safe space. That is very critical so that colleagues from different SELPAs and districts can come together and talk about that one case that maybe is very challenging for them. And you'll hear more from Rose as we share some of our, deeper dive into what we did during these COPs. Also, of course, we want to share resources. Some SELPAs have for us a program for deaf, hard of hearing students, whereas others don't. So they're regional programs. So do all districts know about these programs? We have a high turnover of special ed staff in our practices. And how do we make sure that everybody is aware of different programs and services? Our SELPA website needs to be updated to reflect all this information so that anybody who walks in or joins in a particular school year can access those. So those were some of our reasons for starting the COPs. And of course, we wanted to identify topics that make sense for professional development. So we took a lot of surveys and based our professional development this year on those surveys. And how did we do that? Of course, we wanted to create an environment that was friendly for everybody. We chose virtual modes of meeting still right now. And we are trying to connect people from different SELPAs together, find a time that will work. Psychologists had more freedom on a Friday morning, whereas, teachers who, we also had a COP for the deaf, hard of hearing teachers and VI specialists that had to be done much later in the day. So all these were important factors as we chose the time to start our COP. And of course, the purpose was to come together to share ideas, experiences, and resources. Some of the key ingredients that makes the COP really successful, and I wouldn't say that we jumped right on it all the time, but we had this idea of having a community together with a moderator, and that would be me, and then have a facilitator every time. We could get somebody like Rose when we had psychologists, or when we had with our program specialists and coordinators, we were able to get experts in ADR who came in and talked about different topics of alternative dispute resolution and IEP strategies. And then, of course, invitation was sent virtually and with an agenda of what we were going to talk about at every COP. The SELPA meetings for 21-22 school year, these were some of the COPs that we held. We held it for coordinators and program specialists, like I said, for deaf, hard of hearing teachers, for visually impairment staff, for staff with OM credentials. These are very, very small group of people. And we definitely wanted to, Leo Mapagu, who's the executive director for the SELPA, it was something that he had done a survey prior to me joining, and there was a need to get these programs together to really understand that we're not missing the needs of any and all students as we come together now under one SELPA. And of course, psychologists who play a major and critical role in special education determination at all our LEAs. So, of course, we had a sample norms every time we met, and I'm not reading it, just I shared this with you, and we will share slides and you'll get these. And, it was a commitment where we wanted to make sure that everybody agreed upon these norms, right? It was something that they came together, they read it. Now, mind you, one of my group was so small that I kind of did not start and have a norm in it in one of my COP. And guess what? I really needed to bring it back the next time because the meeting was getting sort of hijacked by one speaker. So these are small things we don't realize sometimes that, oh, this can happen. But I tell you that just the very second meeting, I had to bring the norms back in because it helped me as a moderator to facilitate and moderate that meeting much better when I had the norms down. So as much as it seems like a small thing, and we are all in the group of professionals and you think, oh, you don't need it, there might just be that one meeting where you will need it. So just something that to think about. Our meetings did start much later. We're going to take a deeper dive and try to go through the COP meetings with psychologists where I had the opportunity to interact with Rose, who facilitated. Last year, we had 3 meetings, which were the community of practice meeting for an hour and a half. And that led to the certain professional trainings. And these professional trainings were all based on survey, which was taken in 2021 school year, and also the need that arose during the first meeting, and also kind of Rose was able to take a deeper dive, which she'll share in the meetings what happened as we go through this. So this was just our own way of selecting the time. And again, like I said, psychologists had a little bit more freedom. So they were on Fridays in the middle of the day or the afternoon. And then the PD was also for 3 hours. Okay. We're not going to do a breakout room because we have a few people, but I'm missing something on. I'm going to take a break so that, Rose, we can take a look.
Katie Ibarra had a couple of questions. And Katie, if you want to just speak up directly, but she had a couple of questions regarding the meetings and more specifics about time and schedules.
Yes,
thanks. I was curious whether, like, are they open to whoever's interested in attending? And then did the meetings happen like during participants' contract hours? Were they voluntary? Were they paid? I think these are great. I'm just anticipating.
Yes. Good question, Katie. So they are voluntary. All these community of practice, that's one thing. They are voluntary. And you'll be surprised that even when they were voluntary, we had really good attendance. And I would say the attendance is growing as you saw from the psychologist one. It was not till spring that we started. And I sent out notices not just to the lead psychologists, but also to the entire group of certain districts, because it was first shared with the special ed directors that we're going to start this kind of community of practice with psychologists or DHH or VI. So it was shared with the directors. They knew it and they were given the dates, and it was their intent of letting us know who they wanted to participate in the community of practice. So 2-step was shared with the directors, and then once they gave the list, then they were invited and they were told that it's all voluntary. So one of the nice things we saw as the psychologist grew, if one person could not attend it, they made sure they passed the information to their colleagues. So I had that flexibility on virtual thing that they could forward the meeting to others. And so it was like, if a person was on my list to invite but couldn't make it, they made sure that they reached out to their colleagues. And it's all voluntary. Did you get your answer, Lucia?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a lot of...
Oops, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We'll also be going into more specifics about those kinds of things, Katie. So hopefully, we'll get a little bit more in depth with that. So if we are not going to do the breakout, Namita, then I still want to pose this question. What challenges or barriers have you had with professional learning or professional development? And I don't expect an answer right now because I think it really fits well with what we're going to talk about in segueing into the next section, because how do we know that what we are putting out there in terms of professional learning or professional development is getting absorbed by the people who are receiving it? So that's kind of what is really cool about a community of practice. So to think about this question, and as we're going through this, and if you have some questions of what you are going through in terms of your challenges or barriers, we hope that you'll ask those questions as we go along. So I'm going to have you go ahead and go on to the next slide. Namita, are you going to be my?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Okay. So throughout this conference, we just want to establish, as well as within this particular presentation, inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and social justice are all of the cogs that we need to manipulate in ensuring inclusive and supportive environments for all kids. And I think that all of these things separate can stand alone, right? But they work really well when we put them all together. And I just love this slide, so I include it in pretty much everything that I do when I'm doing my presentations, because we want to move from labels and places to individual supports and access to general education. And so this is part of changing our cultural philosophy about how we improve our system to be more inclusive. We want to go from separate silos to a seamless system of support. We want shared ownership of students who are all means each and every. And even within a community of practice kind of thinking, you will kind of understand how we want to include everyone's good thinking within this particular practice. So next slide, please. So here are some characteristics of inclusive schools. And if you have come to this conference, I am sure that you are aware that we need a sense of community, visionary leadership, and high standards for inclusion. We need collaborative partnerships. We have to understand that the roles are changing and what those responsibilities are in inclusion, and that we have an array of services. And when I'm talking about that, I'm putting my special education hat on, or maybe I'm actually taking it off, because special ed isn't the be all and end all, right? It's an array of things that also includes general ed as primary. Next slide, please. So it's partnerships with parents, flexible learning environments, strategies based on research, new forms of accountability and access. And the very important thing is the continuing professional development. So if you'll go to the next slide, it's really enhanced here in a community of practice and in our discussions for today. And this is about just ongoing learning about inclusion, but also the different ways that people are getting information and learning, and what is the best way, how are you going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of people engaging in the discussion, as well as a deeper understanding of the content. But this is going to also be more generalized, so you can utilize communities of practice in many different forms. But certainly here it is about inclusion, continuing professional development, and understanding a different way to ensure that internalization, that active engagement to pursue inclusive settings for kids. So I want to start with the different types of professional learning, because there are many. And in a community of practice, what we learned in some of our research and our practices is, these are semester courses that can go on. And it's just really understanding what professional learning is. So you can have classroom-based learning, which is observations of practice or coaching and mentoring. So I have a number of instructional coaches who go out and they observe practice. They're there to coach and mentor. They give feedback to teachers. So they're in the classroom and teachers are learning from them, from their observations. within their classrooms. So that's one type of professional learning. Face-to-face learning is like what you're getting now. Conferences, learning events, training courses, and they're pretty much one way, right? They're sit and get. You're going to listen to information and you're going to learn, right? Just from sitting and getting. Many of us do, but we want to make sure that we're getting more in-depth and extending learning. So next slide, please. It could be formal studies, so postgraduate studies, certification, diploma courses where you are learning information towards an end result, like a degree or a certification. You can perform research, which is another form of professional learning. You're going to read up on your own. You are going to participate in action research. Again, that's kind of just a one way, right? You're doing this towards a particular area of focus, and you're going to conduct your research, your reading towards that end. And the next slide. And you're doing some online learning right now. So we are doing professional learning through webinars and our interactions on social media. But a community of practice includes a professional learning community or teams and networks. But the difference of a community of practice is that extended learning piece. So you will see how this kind of unfolds, because the rest of the learning is about towards an end, is an individual, is a requirement, is sit and get, whereas a community of practice is really about engaging the community on a certain topic so that you can extend your learning. Okay. Next slide, please. So we have already talked about communities of practice, and we're kind of going to go ad nauseum on this, but I'm going to try to give you a more practical bent on a COP, a little different from what Namita has already provided to you. So it allows groups of individuals to engage in collective learning and share their experiences and learn a practice better with regular interaction, meaning you're not only just going to meet once, you're not just going to come to a conference and just sit and get, you're not going to come to a webinar and get a sit and get, and you're actually going to come maybe multiple times, and hopefully the topic is of interest and very focused to your work, that you want that regular interaction to get better at what you do. It's voluntary. It would be voluntary. In some cases, it might be mandatory, and your administrator may say, you need to participate in this community of practice. To me, that's again, more like a sit and get. You know, it may not be something that you want to do or you have an interest in doing, or that you have to do it because it's part of you know, your coursework, and it's disguised as a community of practice. But really, it is about a shared competence amongst the members. So you could be teachers, you could be school psychologists. What we have been doing is primarily what I've been involved in is with school psychologists. And we have a particular topic that we have in mind. Our shared domain is a school psychology practice, but it could very well be something very different. I'm going to use, I don't know if many of you know what Meetup is, or maybe all of you or many of you participate in Meetup, and they are groups of people who get together who have a particular domain of interest and have a competence that they want to participate in, and distinguishes their members from other groups. So one in particular that I want to participate in more is one on, there's a writers group, and the writers group is talking about different topics each week, but it's very focused, right? So they are talking about writer's block or fiction or nonfiction. With the school psychologist, the domain is, you know, a practice within their particular profession. So there can be many different types of domains that cover a community of practice. Next slide, please. And within the community, you're building relationships. That one's is really the crux of the community. You want to have a place where you can help each other, that is a safe place, that you build relationships with, who you can connect with even after, and have your own little community of practice, but enable each other to learn from each other and from your resources and joint activities and discussions. Next slide, please. And the members are practitioners, so you're sharing a repertoire of resources. So I'm going to use my writing group again. So the domain is writing, the community is writers, and the practice is a particular type of let's say writer's block. And so we're going to share experiences and stories. This is what happened to me. This is what I tried. Here are some resources. Here's a great book that you can read. What happens, if this is successive over many days. Or with the school psychologist group, it was about sharing different points of view, not just different points of view, but from the different members, you have a vast array of knowledge. So it's not about sitting and getting. This is an active group that discusses a particular topic, an area of focus. So the benefits, again, are peer-to-peer learning, new relationships are developed, innovative problem solving and collaboration. So Namita talked a little bit about someone who was trying to sabotage one of her meetings, and this happens. So you may have veterans as well as new people to the field. Could be teachers, could be school psychologists, even writers. And you have individuals with a lot of experience, but you also have people who've just graduated from grad school or are bringing some new tips to the group. And in terms of being inclusive, a community of practice really lends itself to allowing lots of voices in the room, right? So it takes some time possibly to develop those voices. What I found in our practice in terms of allowing those voices to be shared is there may be people who are talking like I am online, but there's someone in the chat who's putting something in there, some really great stuff. And even when you go to them and say, would you like to talk a little bit more about that? And an individual will say, oh, but I've already put that in the chat. It's stuff that you can get, on your own. So then in the next presentation, that individual will be a little bit more brave and they'll still put some things in the chat. But the next time it's like, hey, you put something else in there. Do you want to talk about it? And they start to build, of course, more comfort within the community of practice. So that collaboration begins to build. And, with someone asked if anybody can join. And sure, anyone can join. But if it's a focused group, again, it's about the domain. So if the domain is about a practice, say assessment for a school psychologist group, or it's about inclusion and you want a specific type of discussion around inclusion, it's a team and people want to be a part of that team. If you close it off, it's really hard to say it's an inclusive group, right? They can come in and they can kind of dabble in it and see if they would like to join. They can sit back and listen. But we're hoping that everyone is providing some productive ideas. So again, the focus is about a focused topics, equity and voices and responses, and definitely opinions. And those can be plus or minus. We've had some discussions where there were some disagreements or different ways of doing things. And so if you are flexible and open to those ideas and know that someone might be taking over your meeting, you do need to have a facilitator. That facilitator isn't presenting the information. So that facilitator is someone who can help to guide the discussion. So in my particular case, I'm a former school psychologist, and so school psychs are my people. And I know that they like to process and they like to talk about the topics. Administrators or teachers, you need to have somebody keep people on on target, on topic, and don't take the group in a different direction, which is okay most of the time. But sometimes we had someone who started talking about autism versus we were really focusing on dyslexia. And you can understand that that was really way off in this other field where we wanted to keep it tight so that we could focus on autism at a different time. So we just needed to pull that person back in, but I just kept the conversation going and moving to help the group for that particular session. So it really is about extending learning. How many times have you gone to a webinar, professional learning event, and you sit and you get this information, you get back to school, I want to implement some of these things, I might have gotten 2, 3 things out of that particular session, and boom, it's gone. You are too busy, right? So what we are hoping, and what communities of practice really lend themselves to, is that opportunity to extend your learning. So you went to a professional learning event, a webinar, an in-person conference, and now you are going to be invited to have more professional dialogue, active engagement, and interchange of ideas. Whereas in the sit and get, you got a lot of information, and it's all wonderful. In the school psychologist presentations, we had wonderful presenters. They had tons of information, but there wasn't this two-way interaction. So that's what the difference is within a community of practice, is allowing people to have a dialogue about a particular topic. And in our case, where it worked out really well was having a series of presentations by experts in the field in dyslexia, in intellectual disability, in mental health services. And then now we're going to extend that learning by saying, okay, what questions did you have about that? What assessments are you using? So it's this interchange of ideas that's somewhat different, but maybe still taking from the content and bringing it back to the group and having a wider discussion. So there's different types of communities of practice. So again, I've been talking about professional practitioners, and there could be community partners. I'm also a part of a community park board, and we have a collective interest in something. So like events. So we have a little community of practice who discusses events. So we go out, we've learned about something, and believe it or not, community park events, and then we come back and now we're going to discuss about how we're going to implement that that information that we learned from our outing or our observation out in the community. They can be social groups, and again, I brought up the meetup example. So different kinds of things. You can be a part of a I don't know, an art group, a dog walking group, who's learning about a practice of taking care of and walking dogs. But then you're going to get together and you're going to talk about, hey, you know, I learned this in this other class, and you get to talk about it rather than just, you know, sitting and getting but learning from each other. So in the chat, what I want you to do from all of that information is to think about communities of practice in your professional world. And do you currently belong to a community practice? And what do you like about a community practice, or what questions do you have? So I want you to put that in the chat. And I hope we come up with some different kinds of communities of practice that people participate in. Again, my example was a writer's group. Yes, Cindy Jo, shared passions within a community of practice group. Oh, okay. After school providers, creative ideas.
I'm going to do a plug-in for that. It's a monthly session for after school providers, how to include kids with special need and second languages. And it's a monthly session, how to meet, and it's based on whatever everybody tells us, and we design that. It's free, it's online, it's 11 o'clock every Tuesday.
Great.
Yes, I will send you this information.
So, and informal COPs like teacher problem solving at lunch. Is there anything else? And even not within your professional, you can think of community things that you participate in. Offer a COP after a professional development provided through quality counts. Yep. So again, it's about extending the learning beyond what you have gotten. So if there were things that you have a group of people who participated in a presentation here at the Inclusion Collaborative Conference, you might want to go back and make sure that you extend learning through a COP at your site or within an educational professional practitioners community, and make sure that you're extending that learning and keep it going so that you get better. And Lauren had said that she does something similar with TK. She calls it networking, but it may be more of a COP.
Yeah, I think I really like Lupe, I think shared that it is short and goal driven. So yeah, definitely that's a big idea of, you know, again, repeated engagement, but for a time that works. I like the sharing of knowledge and building of other strengths. Exactly. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, very nice. So thank you for everybody for sharing your thoughts and ideas and how you're using. Hopefully you get some more strategies today.
Okay.
And I think the second part some of you answered was, what do you like about the community of practice, and saying that it is short and monthly, having it at a fixed time. And I think for me, I know that people ask me to share agenda. Sometimes I cannot, like, because we invite speakers, so I may not have it right in the beginning, you know, all the topics that will be covered. But as I go through, I always, within a week before the meeting, at least I try to send the agenda out. So that's critical. And I was sharing with Rose, like one time it was on a Friday, like right before spring break or something. And I forgot to send a reminder, and you know, we really didn't have too many people turn up. So it's extremely important, even though you schedule it out for the whole year, but sending those reminders, these are small things, but really help your community to remember when it is happening, and you know, the agenda and those kind of things. Through practice, we get better, and we learn our people better, and then you know, improve our practice for sure.
And so I also want to make a statement about what a community practice is not. So if what you're understanding is it's a collection of people who are sharing ideas. So what a community of practice is not, is that you have some kind of end result. So I know as an administrator, I've had many projects where I had to get input and provide information towards a particular end. And that's not a community practice. I mean, that's work, right? So it's usually, we do have discussions within those settings about what we can do to solve a particular dilemma, an issue, a focused area for my school, my district. A community practice is more about sharing the ideas so that my practice gets better. So if I'm trying to solve a problem for the district, or I'm trying to get a group towards, you know, a practice of a reading program, a particular math concept, or some kind of a staff engaging in some kind of staff problem solving towards some end, that's not a community of practice. A community practice really is about sharing ideas, respectful consideration, building on your experience, and community, and creating a safe place where people can discuss a topic. Okay, next slide. So this was the example that we were talking about in terms of we called it a spotlight on assessment. And we had a number of presenters on these particular topics through the Northwest SELPA. And what we did was then we built communities of practice to discuss these particular areas. Next slide. So some of the discussion points, again, were about aligning practices across the SELPA, what were best practices in these particular areas, case discussions, assessment practices, and we talked about resources too. Actually, we didn't even get to the resources because the conversations were so rich.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that came out of that was like we will create a folder, and this is this year COP that we're talking about. So definitely the group has grown and there's a lot of learning from each other. So we're talking about, should we create a shared drive, shared folders, how and where to keep resources. So those were discussions that we kind of touched on, but definitely didn't get a lot deeper on this.
So within the dyslexia area, these were just considerations, because sometimes people come and they're expecting everything to be ready for them, right? And that's fine, but we can have some areas that we can discuss, but then out of these, maybe there may be some other areas or people come with other different questions. I always have to make sure that with school psychologists who really process information, get really into the fine details of assessment, that we don't go down the rabbit hole of, just talking about one particular case, one particular assessment and score, that it's broader than that, right? It's broader than that. And certainly having, a different time to kind of discuss, or have a couple of colleagues get together to discuss is great. But these were just areas that we could elicit, just some thinking about. This is what was discussed or presented in the presentation by Dr. Byland on dyslexia. Did any of you want to jump in? And so we allowed for that. And then we also had a note-taking tool. It was kind of hard to be the facilitator and the note taker. So if you're doing something like this, notes should be taken, because I think that it's really good to help us gauge, what we did within the community of practice as facilitators. But then the note-taking tools provided within the presentation slides. So then these notes can then be taken away with the group, and in case that they want to refer back to them. And this is just an example of that particular tool. Again, it's hard to be the facilitator and encouraging people to continue in the conversations as well as take the notes. It's kind of like when you're in IEP meetings and you're writing all of the notes and you're trying to run the meeting as well. But anyway, it's just another tip that you could utilize. And then for my piece here, I just wanted to make sure that we understand what our intention is and who ultimately benefits from a community of practice. And how does this discussion impact the decisions that we make for students? So I'm talking about communities of practice of school psychologists, and ultimately this work should benefit students, right? So if I am working with school psychologists or speech therapists or staff within my schools or school districts, you want this ultimately to benefit not just the adults, but the kids that we serve. And how does this discussion, can you go back, Namita? How does this discussion impact the decisions we make, along with improving our practice, that we think about decisions for more inclusive environments ultimately? And that's what the next slide is. And there you go. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Namita again.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring it back to what we're doing this school year, which is, again, these are some of this community of practice that I'm hosting with Northwest SELPA, which we have, becomes official name for the next school year. As you can see, the ones that got added here are speech language pathologists. And I just want to quickly, I get it when that it is not very easy to start anything new in any organization. And I wanted to share my little story about what happened with a speech language pathologist community of practice. We shared, again, it's the two-step process. We do it with the leadership, and then they gave us the names of the speech language pathologists who could participate, and the calendar invites are sent out, and I calendar the whole year. There are like 6 meetings, and it's all sent out. And 1 week before, I'm waiting for acceptance, and I'm seeing 0 acceptance. I had a couple of people reach out to me to understand what is community of practice, and then I answered back. But when it was almost a week right before the meeting and I still didn't find anybody who accepted it, I went ahead and canceled that meeting, the very first meeting. And luckily we had a leadership meeting just the day after, and I shared, my director wanted me to reiterate to the leadership that we are not having people join in, kind of brainstorm and find out their perspective as to why speech language pathologists are unable to join. And we found out a couple of good reasons came up. A lot of school districts have been short-staffed. They are using a lot of contracts, and they are really struggling with that particular service providers. That's a challenge. But they did say that maybe reduce the number of meetings and also move the time to a little bit later in the day. So I did do that. And to say that the success is that now I do have more than, 40 to 50% accepted the next meeting. So, it's a matter of when it's a new, and this is a new group for 23-24. So I think, I was losing heart. I said, okay, maybe, being an SLP and not being able to meet with that community was really they don't want to come together in our SELPA. I really, was struggling to try to understand what the issues were. But I'm really happy to say that even if it's not 80 to 100% acceptance, I would take a 40 to 50% acceptance for the first meeting, for the first group to come together as a starting point. And like with psychologists, what I saw between last year to this year, the group has tremendously grown. So it's a much bigger group. It's a much vocal group. It comes up with, they are taking the ownership of the group, where they're bringing topics of their own interest, for whether it's professional development or whether it's discussions. So I think I want to go back to the fact about the COPs when it talked about shared interests and coming together over a period of time is a very key learning for me as a coordinator in the SELPA, that it takes time to build those relationships. It takes time to really get people together, and we have to be patient. So that was my learning from 22-23, and I hope that as we build more groups, and guess what, some of the other things I want to share is some of the leaderships are asking for, would you consider an ATAAC group also coming together, because they have very niche needs and are not able to share that with everybody else. And so I did say that could be something to be looked at for next school year, because, again, there are multiple meetings with multiple providers, and we want to make it meaningful discussion. So that's a little bit on what's happening at Northwest SELPA for 23-24 school year. I also wanted to say what were my takeaways. I am identifying these barriers, like I shared with the speech language pathologist group. I tend to send out surveys much earlier in the year so we can have more relevant PDs. My DHH group really worked hard on assessment needs last year, was a big reason for their PD. And this year we were able to have a contract with a specialist who who provided those assessment tools to the group. So I think it's a meaningful work from SELPA when we can provide the PDs that are meaningful for our service providers. And that's going to be our goal. And of course, we want to continue to evaluate how beneficial these COP meetings are, and change formats or change PDs depending on what our population, what our service providers need, what our LEAs need. So I'm happy to share any and all information that I have learned over the couple of years with anybody who's trying to get a COP off the ground. And my email is shared on the slide. I think we did share a deck. In the intro slide, we had the, beginning part of it. So we want to end with sharing with you a quick short video where teachers talk about what they felt when they participated in community of practice. And I think you'll find echo of a lot of those thoughts and feelings from what we heard all of you today. Nupur, are you going to be able?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen now.
So I'm going to stop sharing.
Wait a second, give me a second.
Community of Practice is a group of teachers and people who facilitate the community practice, and we work together online.
Here, you couldn't hear? Could you hear that? Oh, you
Yes.
could. Okay, sorry about that. 1 second.
Just the screen was not full, but if you
Okay, I'll do that.
This is good. Thank you.
Community of Practice is a group of teachers and people who facilitate the community practice, and we work together online, face-to-face, and we learn together.
There's definitely a benefit to having these face-to-face meetings because you get to hear what everybody else is going through. You get to hear more about what a self-contained classroom looked like, what an inclusive classroom looked like.
Being involved in a community of practice really has made me feel like there are other people out there who are facing the same challenges as me, and that I'm not alone, and we can work together to try and solve some of those problems.
Working with this population of students is often quite isolating because there's not a lot of other students who have this level of disability. So when you can bring together a lot of different people across Alberta who work with this population of students, and we can get together face-to-face, we can talk together online, we start to see some of the things that we're doing that are common, and we can grow our knowledge from that.
I think I bring the same thing everybody else brings, and that's just your experience. Everybody has faced many different challenges over their years of teaching, and so just being able to share what you've done in a certain situation, it might be really helpful to someone else.
Anytime you have other people that you're working with, it's always a benefit, because no matter how easy something seems, you're going to need somebody as a sounding board. So it was great to have the community there when I needed something. I could kind of go on and I could post a question, and is anybody else having problems with this? And we could, bounce ideas off each other, or sometimes somebody would just volunteer an answer or share something that they were doing in their classroom, and it would kind of answer a question maybe you didn't even know you had, but also it might be like a stepping stone for you to, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I could change that and make that work in my classroom. And so that was really great. Anytime that I kind of wasn't sure what direction I needed to be going or what I needed to be doing, or if I was confused about something, guaranteed there was an answer there.
The community of practice has been fabulous. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm going to be really sad at the end of the year when it's done. I think as teachers, we sometimes forget how much we can learn from other teachers, and being part of the community of practice has reminded me of that.
Thank you, Nupur. Thank you, everybody, for spending this afternoon with us. Hopefully, you got to hear about our story and feel a little excited about, getting back to your community of practice in some form or the other.